Welcome and thank you for viewing this pre-recorded panel discussion that is part of a Capital Region symposium throughout the month of October. It's titled The Time for Reckoning, Confronting Systemic Racism, Seeking Justice, and Reimagining Society. My name is Paul Grandal. I'm the director of the New York State Writers Institute at the University at Albany. We are co-sponsoring the symposium with the Center for Law and Justice in Albany and several community partners, including WMHT, the Times Union, the Justice Center of Rensselaer County, All of Us, Amnesty International USA, and others. We also want to thank the Steve McKee Foundation of Troy for its generous philanthropic gift that is helping to underwrite this symposium. We'll be doing similar recorded panel discussions with public officials and community members in Albany and Troy as well. So let me begin by introducing our moderator for the Schenectady Public Officials panel. Paul Nelson is a veteran journalist and an award-winning staff writer for the Albany Times Union, where he covers police, courts, and municipal affairs in the city and county of Schenectady, as well as the suburban towns of Niskayuna and Rotterdam. We appreciate everyone's participation today, and now I'll turn it over to our moderator, Paul Nelson.
Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate the opportunity to moderate this panel. And again, let me just acknowledge the sponsors, the New York State Writers Institute at the University at Albany and the Center for Law and Justice, also in Albany. So a shout out to Paul Grandal and Dr. Alice Green. As Paul said, my name is Paul Nelson. I'm a reporter with the Times Union. I've been with the paper about 14 years. And let me just, by way of introduction, just talk about some of the issues that we're gonna explore this afternoon. And these certainly are compelling issues because I don't need to tell anyone that we're certainly at a defining moment. Some people might even say a defining movement in this country as we kind of address and confront some of these longstanding issues of racism and racial injustice. So with that said, let me get to the real stars of the show and let me introduce, and I'm not doing this in any particular order, I don't want anyone to feel slighted, but we have Schenectady County District Attorney Robert Carney, who has served in that position since being elected in 1989. Hopefully I have that right, Bob?
That's right, Paul.
Okay. Next we have Mayor Gary McCarthy, who's a Democrat in his third term as the mayor of the Electric City. And last but certainly not least, Police Chief Eric Clifford, who has led that department since September of 2016. And we're holding out hope that perhaps Schenectady City Council President John Moudavarian, who we've invited, hopefully he can join us at some point in this discussion. So what I'd like to do is just to begin by, first of all, just defining institutional racism. I think it's important that we just kind of lay that out there. So institutional racism, also known as systemic racism, is a form of racism that's embedded as normal practice within society or an organization, and it can lead to such issues as discrimination in criminal justice, employment, housing, healthcare, political power, education, among other issues. So let me just talk briefly in terms of just kind of laying and setting up the stage for my first question. So I was actually listening to a radio broadcast. It was actually on NPR. It was a business segment that they were doing. They were talking about the cost of racism. There was a study that was done by Citigroup over the course of 20 years, and they just recently came out with the findings of their studies. And I found that over the last 20 years, that the US economy has lost 16 trillion with a T dollars, and that's in terms of the GDP, the gross domestic profit, because of discrimination against African Americans. And the study also pointed out that there are 4 key racial gaps between African Americans and whites. And just forgive me because these are a dizzying array of numbers, but it said it's 13 trillion lost in potential business revenue because of discriminatory lending to African American entrepreneurs, 2.7 trillion in income loss because of the disparities in wages suffered by African Americans, 218 billion over over the past 2 decades because of discrimination in providing housing credit, and 90 billion to 113 billion in lifetime cost from discrimination in accessing higher education. So Mayor McCarthy, let me just kind of throw out the first question to you. Given numbers like those, I mean, those are staggering numbers, no doubt about it, but can you just kind of tell me what can communities like Schenectady, with a population of roughly 66,000 people, 21% of whom are Black, what can communities like Schenectady do to kind of help improve the financial conditions of Black people and other people of color?
Again, I want to just thank you for the opportunity to be here and for putting this forum together. Paul, some of that, when you talk about those national numbers, I think they become too large for people to grasp. It's when you break them down into communities and neighborhoods that it really becomes much more significant. You look at Schenectady, we've had a long history of a lot of technical innovations. GE was here, Westinghouse, or not Westinghouse, American Locomotive. We had some of the Westinghouse family was here. Went through a period of decline, and we've seen a rebirth where we're now building the community up, and hopefully nobody is being left out of it, even though some things are moving faster than others. If you look at, of course, the transformational engagement that's happened in downtown, along Mohawk Harbor, but simultaneously we have worked in Hamilton Hill, doing stuff in Crane Street, doing stuff on Eastern Avenue to create housing opportunities where people want to live there. Businesses want to consider options within the community. Some of the things you outline, racism can be a clear component of it, but poverty, I think, transcends some of that. So it's not necessarily just because of racism, but it's sexism. It's all the factors that play in, and you have to, again, treat people as equals. You have to look to create opportunity over a level playing field. And banks and financial institutions have to be part of that discussion, where the old line of, the old term of redlining and the old practice of redlining created pockets of poverty that have forced urban areas to spend more on policing. They've hindered the growth, and as you outlined, they've hindered the opportunity that some individuals should have had, where the reference today is the zip code that you're born in or you live in determines the outcome of your future. Some of that was fundamental just redlining. And hopefully that we've set an example here in Schenectady where you see the economic development that's happening. It's setting a tone and a path that doesn't happen overnight, but over a longer period of time, you see real transformational change. There's, on Hamilton Hill, which was our viewed as like the worst neighborhood in terms of economic opportunity, I think we have over $75 million worth of projects underway there today. We're looking to do similar things in Mount Pleasant, and you look at the transformation that's happening on Eastern Avenue. Again, it's radiating out of downtown, and we're really building a community that's going to have long-term sustainable growth and hopefully equal opportunity for all the residents.
Okay. So Mayor, you talked about, all the changes, throughout the different neighborhoods in the city of Schenectady. You talked about what's going on in Hamilton Hill and Mount Pleasant. Now, you said that hopefully nobody is being left out of it. I mean, when you talk to, some of the folks in Hamilton Hill and, the Vale neighborhood in Mount Pleasant, do you get that sense, though, that they feel that they're a part of the change, that metamorphosis that's taking place in the city of Schenectady?
Some do, some are clearly part of it. Some are still out of it and not fully engaged. And I believe that the fundamental component of that is still education. That, we have a school district that has seen a number of changes, but it's not necessarily producing what we'd like in the total outcome of a product where you get 100% graduation rate. And if people don't have the skill sets, they're not able to compete in today's marketplace. And so we have to look at not only our younger, the kids who are going through, whether it's elementary school, middle school, or high school, that they're able to progress in a manner that gives them real value. And then those people that, for whether it's been poor choices on their own part, failures within the educational system, or just missed opportunities, that they still have a path to look at education, training skills, and a method to create value within themselves so that they can go out and add real value to the community.
Gotcha. Okay. So obviously, we see all these protests taking place, not only here locally in Schenectady, we've seen some in Saratoga Springs, but across the nation. So I just want to kind of bring, Bob, I want to bring you into the conversation and ask you sort of what are some of your kind of general impressions of the protests that's taking place that are broken out across the country, in terms of trying to bring about racial justice and inequity? What are some of your just general overall impressions of, what's taking place?
Well, I understand it. When you see something like what happened to George Floyd, I think that was the moment that crystallized the realization amongst many, many white people that there are problems nationally. I think it becomes a little, sometimes difficult, though, to, lump all the cases in together and say they're all the same. I think anybody that looked at George Floyd, including any prosecutor, would realize that what happened to that man was an act of homicide, was a murder. And yet there are other cases that are more difficult. The Breonna Taylor case comes to mind, where, you got Charles Barkley saying on national TV that's a little different. And the problem with that is to expect the criminal justice system to respond by prosecuting those officers, I think is a tough case, because as long as they were there with a right to be there and they announced themselves and then they were fired upon and one of them was shot, they're legally entitled to shoot back. So it doesn't make her death any less tragic or unnecessary, but it's the kind of thing, when you look at George Floyd, you look at that case, you start to think about cases like prosecutors think about them, which is it's a fact-based analysis. But in terms of the protests in general, I understand the frustration. I understand the fact that there is a history of bad situations involving police, and it's understandable. What is remarkable about this moment is, I think opinions have changed. There is a danger that there can be some backsliding, though, if the protests are perceived as going off in directions that are overly broad or unfair, or because I think when you boil it down, it's not necessarily a problem with policing everywhere or policing in general. I think there are police departments that have bad cultures and there are police departments that have good cultures. From everything I've seen and heard, it looks like Minneapolis is a police department that's had a lot of problems. Whereas right across the Mississippi, St. Paul seems to be a police department that is well tuned with the community. And in my tenure here, which is more than 30 years now, I've seen dramatic changes in the Schenectady Police Department. I think, there were issues and cultural things about the department during the 90s and the early aughts that were a problem. And a lot of people, police officers, were prosecuted and administratively dealt with. And I've seen a pretty dramatic transformation of the police department, where I think they're in a pretty good place vis-a-vis the community.
Bob, and we'll I promise you we'll get to that. We'll kind of, do a deeper dive into that. But I want to pick up on something that you said as part of your remarks, that you think that it was the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis that sort of crystallized, it for white people. That's it. That's what you said. I just want to make sure that I heard you correctly.
Yeah, I think there's statistical evidence to back that up.
Gotcha. So somebody might say, again, just, playing devil's advocate, why do you think it took so long?
I think that case is so powerful, and it's on video, and you hear him, and everybody who looks at that situation, who sees it and hears it, knows that that was a murderous act, and it was so clearly beyond the pale of anything that police should be doing, that it was, I don't see how you could take a contrary view of that.
Gotcha.
And I think that's what happened with people everywhere.
Right. Chief Clifford, let me bring you into the conversation, because I know when that George Floyd situation happened that you came out, you condemned what happened, you condemned these officers. I was listening to Bob Carney and also said that as a part of this whole movement, it seems that sometimes people tend to paint all police departments with the same broad brush. Do you feel that sometimes the police departments, they're out there doing their job, serving and protecting, do they sometimes kind of get lost in all of this and they sort of get a bad rap and lumped in with all the other police departments that may not be doing, what they're supposed to be doing?
The answer is yes to that question, and I'll get to that. I just want to kind of add one thing to the previous comment that Bob made about with the George Floyd situation. From a law enforcement perspective, police officers out there actually doing the job. What really shocked me about that, I should say it shocked me, and that inherently is the problem, in that there's many instances where the police are doing their job, and members of the public who don't understand the job will get shocked by what they see. But police officers will see it and they'll understand, well, I understand what's going on here, and it doesn't shock me that much. But with the George Floyd situation, it shocked me, and it shocked other police officers, other police leaders, because not only did that officer sit there on his neck with his knee, but he just sat there and continued to sit there. And on top of all of that, his colleagues, his other police officers that were there didn't do anything about it. So that is really the shock factor that I think rippled through not only communities, especially white communities, but police departments and officers out there doing their job. As it relates to police departments getting painted with a broad brush, I think that we saw exactly that. What happened is that we're a profession. So what happens in one city affects the entire profession. And, we take the bad with the good with the bad, because you have police officers running into towers that were attacked on 9/11. They were risking their lives. And here in Schenectady, New York, people were walking up thanking police officers for doing their job. So we understand that we get congratulated when police officers do heroic things in some communities. And then when they do bad things, we're gonna have to face that. And really, that's why I've spoken a lot about our profession nationwide, worldwide, needing to get better at what we're doing, because it doesn't matter whether you get stopped by a Schenectady police officer or a Glenville police officer or a Minneapolis police officer. All you see is that it's a police officer.
Okay. And let me stay with you, Chief Clifford, and ask you rather if you have ever personally experienced examples of overt discrimination or systemic racism, and if so, can you describe what happened and how you dealt with it?
When you say overt, I'm guessing that you would mean like obvious, that like obvious racism. I can't say that I've ever seen anything obvious like that. While working, do I feel that partners may have done something based on a bias? I think that's fair to say I have seen that. And what did I do as a result of that? As a partner, I've always tried to make things better, as far as if somebody was stopped for no reason that I could see other than maybe the color of their skin, I would ask the question, why are we stopping this person? I would try to dig deep to see where we were. And if that question couldn't be answered, then I would say, well, we shouldn't be doing this. Let's just move on. Let's get their name and move on. Or maybe we don't even do that. Maybe we just engage in conversation. But it's very difficult to have that definition between overt and subtle, I think, when it comes to things like this.
Gotcha. Okay. So what you're referring to then is racial profiling then, correct? If somebody's being stopped purely because of the color of their skin, that's racial profiling, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let me ask you, because that sort of leads me to another point I was going to get to later on in the conversation, but let me ask you about this term that, you've heard it, obviously, the blue wall of silence. I mean, is that something that you think is prevalent among police departments?
I think it is, or it was, probably still is in many police departments. I think that, inherently police departments like to protect, almost like a family. They like to protect each other. So I've been speaking about it for the last 4 years. Every time we hire a new recruit class, I tell them specifically, there is no blue wall of silence. I explain the history that our organization has gone through on how typically when something happens that's bad, it's usually many people who are collateral damage because they like to try to feel like there's a blue wall of silence and they end up getting dragged into the situation. And many times they will end up in a worse situation than the person that got in trouble in the first place. So I think it's human nature for that blue wall of silence to want to go up. You might have that in your family. Should somebody in your family run into a situation, you may not want to talk about it, or you may actually go into defense mode about it. So I think that it not only exists, but it's going to be a daily problem for police administrators and supervisors to constantly reinforce that message that it cannot exist.
Gotcha. DA Carney, have you ever personally experienced examples of overt racism or systemic racism? Same question as I posed to the police chief. And if so, can you describe what happened and how you dealt with it?
I can't say I've ever seen overt racism in the criminal justice system by police, prosecutors, or judges, or obviously defense attorneys. But I think the issue which I've been aware of for a very long time of implicit bias is something that we have to look for. And I think more than 20 years ago, I remember I started telling my assistants when they're evaluating a case, I specifically said, look at, what do you want to do with this particular individual? And let's say he's a defendant from Hamilton Hill in the city of Schenectady. Would we be treating a kid from the town of Niskayuna who got arrested for this crime the same, or is there a disparate treatment? And I think, so for a long time, I've been aware of the fact that the best way to guard against implicit bias in the criminal justice system is to think about explicit bias, is to think about, try to actually think about it and make that part of your conscious deliberation in the case to treat people fairly. In the criminal justice system, there's always sort of a yin and a yang between treating people consistently, which is similar, people with a similar background, similarly charged, ought to be treated similarly. But at the same time, it has to be fair to the unique circumstances of an individual case. You might have two people shoplifting, one to steal food because they want to feed their kids, and somebody else who's shoplifting just for the thrill of stealing something. I mean, so, and you're going to treat those people differently, and you should. But so anyway, I think actively engaging in the process of thinking about race and discrimination is valuable.
Gotcha. Okay. Mayor McCarthy, has systemic racism manifested how has systemic racism manifested within the policies and practices of the institution that you're in charge of?
Well, I'm not sure that it's manifested itself so much in what the bigger concern is the subtle aspect of racism. You know, the overt is clearly identified and tends to, well, somebody may do something, it gets a clear negative reaction by people who have common sense and showing good leadership. The subtle aspects of it are harder to identify sometimes, and you have to, again, work to create an atmosphere that creates opportunity across, whether it's the city of Schenectady, just with city employees, or with the community as a whole, so that people feel that they're treated equal, that they see the value of working together, and they see the value of individuals, not because of their sex, not because of their race, not because of their age, but the intrinsic quality that they possess and can work together on.
Gotcha. So, and I know this sort of has been sort of a longstanding problem and challenge, for the DA's office, for the police department, but in terms of City Hall and trying to diversify the workforce to better reflect, the racial and ethnic composition in the city of Schenectady, how challenging has that been? And I guess what can the city do different to, bring up those numbers, to increase it so we move closer to, making City Hall look like when we step out into, the streets of Schenectady? How do we go about, kind of developing that and making sure that we make a good faith attempt to do that?
We are doing it. Our City Hall staff is more diverse really than it ever has been. Our city council is more diverse than it's ever been. The rules that we operate under with civil service still restrict some of the hiring practices. Even though you may want to go out and hire somebody, you can't just do it. They have to meet certain criteria. And it's going back to that whole thing within the educational system, that people have to understand the opportunities that exist with public employment. And if they want to pursue those opportunities, the method by which you pursue it, you have to take a civil service test. You have to score within the top 3. You may have to wait a year to get to that point. And in public sector, sometimes we go through periods where we're trying to hire people real quick. And then we also go through periods where budgets, as we are today, where we can't hire people. And the private sector and other entities have greater flexibility in terms of hiring than we do in the current environment for public sector. And that restricts the opportunity to bring people in. It's very difficult, especially in the public safety area, those areas that we have greater flexibility in seasonal employment, in entry-level positions. Those positions actually have a greater reflect the composition of the community than those that are harder to get in because of the civil service restrictions are greater.
Gotcha. Hey, Chief Clifford, let me throw that same question out to you. I know at one point that the police department had a campaign. They were trying to, recruit people of color. And I believe you recently shared to me that you've identified, I think you guys are going to try to make greater outreaches, to younger folks in terms of maybe exposing them and letting them know that, hey, yeah, law enforcement is a viable career. So talk with me about, I guess, some of those initiatives and challenges.
Yeah, we've been doing it for the last 4 years that I've been the chief. Every time we interact with the public, we use it as a recruiting opportunity. But we've specifically created programs that are designed to try to recruit members of our community to be police officers in our community. So we are reflective of that. So we started off by doing college fairs. We would be out to Union College, we would be out to SCC, and we would be out to SUNY Albany. But we've also expanded it to the high school level now. And we're expanding our outreach within the high school and the colleges to criminal justice clubs. So within the Schenectady High School, we have a criminal justice club where we have lieutenants and sergeants go over there and talk to the students there, talk about what it means to be a police officer, bring them here to the police department, give them exposure to what we do here, and then talk about the job and what it takes to become one. And we do that also at the community college level. There it's a little bit more focused on what courses you should be taking to be a police officer. Many times we'll talk about the fact that you're going to learn what you need to know about being a police officer in the academy. So when you're in college, rather than focus on criminal justice, if you want to be a police officer, maybe you should focus more on psychology or sociology. If you're going to be a police officer, again, I'm a firm believer a criminal justice major is very good if you want to work in the criminal justice field, but not be a police officer. But you're going to learn about penal law and the academy, so there's no need to take it in college also. You're better served by learning more about social problems, social ills, ways to deal with that. So we've been doing things like that. But even if we just go out to a community event and we have a table put up, we bring brochures and we have officers there, part of our neighborhood engagement team, that are there to talk to individuals and really recruit them to be police officers. I myself, if I'm given the opportunity, if I see somebody that says, I want to be a police officer, I'll personally give them my contact information and say, I'm busy. I won't always get right back to you, but please reach out. I will put you in touch with the right person and help guide you through the process. The process right now is our hurdle. As the mayor already indicated, civil service is very difficult to go through. Even if you know people that have been through it, it's hard to maneuver through it. And so if you don't know anybody who's been through it, trying to maneuver is very hard. You could be a college graduate with a 4.0 average and graduate from Rutgers University or SUNY Oneonta or Plattsburgh or Syracuse University or Buffalo and decide the day you graduate, I want to be a police officer. Well, you come back to Schenectady, you're going to have to wait until the test is given. And that might be up to a year. And then you have to take the test. And then you have to wait for the results to come back. And then once the results come back, the academy is only given twice a year. So you have to wait until the Canvas process starts, which is roughly about 4 months before the academy. You have to take your physical fitness tests. Well, hopefully you have to get the letter in the mail that you got Canvas and it doesn't get lost. Then you got to take the physical fitness test. Then you have to go through the battery of a background application process, interview. We do a very in-depth background check on everybody that we hire. And then it just gets you to the point where you can be hired. And from the time you decide you want to be a police officer upon graduating college and the time you would actually be hired could be anywhere from 1 year to 3 years. And that's a long time in a person's life to kind of be in limbo and trying to do so. I think that to really make some changes and be able to start having police departments reflective of the community that they serve, that needs to change.
Right. Now you said I'm sorry, Chief. So you said the process is a big part of the hurdle, but then also too, when you go out into communities of color, I'm sure that you probably see also that there's sort of an entrenched mistrust or distrust of the police department. So my question pointedly to you is, how do we deal with that? How do we try to break down some of those barriers, some of that mistrust, so that perhaps they view, police and law enforcement as, yeah, we can actually get into a career, make a viable career out of that? How do you deal with those youngsters who might have had a negative reaction, with the police, or, they hear, a lot of criticism, in the neighborhood about the police? How do you deal with that?
I would like to say that I can say this with confidence that between 2017 and 2020, we gradually built ourselves to where, if you asked me this question last year this time, I would say that the community not only supported us, but welcomed us when we came there. We were doing very well with community engagement. Certainly individuals that maybe had a bad experience with the police did not look favorably upon us. But we did Halloween last year where we rode around with probably over 150 kids, had contact with over 150 kids, giving out candy. And we had a lot of support of the community with our police department. And then Memorial Day of 2020 happened, George Floyd. And there was that seismic shift right there. Overnight, people's perceptions changed. So how are we going to get past that? We as a profession have to stop these instances where we keep bringing discredit upon ourselves. That's how we get past it. Because the community will be there to support us as long as they are not consistently reminded that bad things are happening, mistakes are being made. And that's entirely on police departments to have the proper training and have the proper people doing the policing. Because I think that's fair to say that the police officers aren't always white officers, but it's police officers that are looked at regardless of what color they are. There's instances where this distrust with the police departments has arisen when the officer has been of color also.
Gotcha. DA Carney, do you agree with some complaints, from some folks in the community that the criminal justice system is inherently racist?
No, I don't think the criminal justice system is inherently racist.
Tell me more.
Well, I think that there are societal problems having to do with race that you outlined at the beginning of this conversation. And I don't doubt that the legacy of slavery has carried through in a lot of ways that have made the current generations of people in a worse situation because of that. But look, the statutes are colorblind. Enforcement and prosecution can be affected by implicit bias. We try to guard against it, but I don't think that the criminal justice system is inherently racist. I just think that people are dealt with relatively consistently and fairly, and that's what we strive for.
All right. Governor Cuomo's executive order calls for police reform. I know Mayor McCarthy and Chief Clifford, you guys have been an integral part of kind of crafting that, and you're in the process of doing that right now. But there's some activists out there who contend that that doesn't go nearly far enough, and what there needs to be is a transformation. So what do you see as the difference between reform and transformation, and where do you see the possibility for transformation, Mayor McCarthy?
Well, I think you have to let the whole scenario play out. We've seen some horrendous things that has happened because of technology, where more things are independently videoed now. It gives us an opportunity in this community dialogue to talk about the things that the police department is doing right, the things that we see as opportunities to do better, and then in that process, correct those perceptions or the mistrust that exists between members of the community and public safety. And I've said before and said in some of the meetings, again, some of it is implicit racism and bias, but at the same time, there are things that I believe are driven by systemic poverty that we have. And those things transcend, again, race, gender, age, and we can't necessarily treat those things as separately. We have to look at all of them. How do you create that environment of opportunity throughout the entire community?
Gotcha. So let me just press you a little bit more on that question, though, because, do you see the difference, though? Obviously, like I said, you and Chief Clifford and other, stakeholders, as they say, are working on, crafting that reform. But do you think that beyond that, more needs to be done and there needs to be an actual transformation?
Well, let's see what the reform produces before we call for transformation. That becomes semantics in terms of word choice.
Right.
It's if you're happy with the outcome of, if you've been the victim of a crime, if the police have showed up in a timely manner, they put the case together, it's gone through the court system, the DA's office has prosecuted it, you're happy with it. That's what we want, and we want to be able to articulate that message. Now, if you feel you were a victim of a crime, the police were slow in their response, there is no arrest made, you're frustrated, you're mad at that, those are areas that we have to look at. How do we fill those gaps and again, make people feel that the police are working as community leaders to solve problems that they have and fill the needs that they want.
Okay, all righty. Hey, I'm being told that we don't have a whole lot of time left, but Chief Clifford, I wanted to get you to comment on, because I've heard this term kind of bandied about a lot, defund the police. When you hear that, what comes to mind? What do you think when people talk about defunding the police?
Well, I was hoping you were asking me to comment on the last question because I had an answer for you.
Started to tell you in the clock. If you can make it quick, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I will make this one quick. I just want to say that we've already had the district attorney and the mayor, both who have been involved in our criminal justice system for a long time, already talked about the transformation that has happened here in Schenectady at the police department. So I'd like to give credit where credit is due, that I'm a firm belief that under Chief Chair's leadership, we started transforming ourselves. We transformed the culture here at the police department. So I think that transformation is a solid word to use, but we've been working on that for the last 13 years here. So I just want to make that point. As for defunding the police, I understand what people are saying. I know that they don't want to take my budget away and not have police. I understand that. Mayor McCarthy can say that we've been talking for the last 3 years. We've been meeting with Ellis Hospital and other groups about shifting some of the jobs that we do. When I say jobs, I mean calls for service, to the right people. So when we go on somebody who needs a mental health evaluation, they haven't taken their medication and they're in crisis, they call for the police to pick them up and send them to the hospital to be treated. We are not the best people to do that. Somebody that calls the Ellis Hospital to say, I forgot to take my medication and now I'm in crisis. Ellis calls us, we show up at their door. Their first question is, why are you here? I called the hospital. So we've been talking about shifting this already. The argument I will make is to say, when you say defund the police, don't take funding from me, because I was never given funding to do that job in the first place. What I would say is fund mental health clinics so that they have the staff that can be out in the community helping people that need them. Fund outreach workers that can help people with substance abuses and help people that are in such dire straits from a poverty level that they're homeless. Fund those programs rather than saying that you're going to defund the police.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, listen,
Can I say something quick about
yeah, go ahead, D.A. Carney. Yep,
Yeah, I
go ahead.
saw a professor of John Jay Criminal Justice School talking about this issue, and he said there isn't a police department in the country that doesn't have a last in, first out policy. So if you shrink the budget of the police department, you're getting rid of your youngest police officers, who may be amongst your most educated and people who are entering the police culture at a time when they can meaningfully change it. So you're really hurting an organization if you take away the youngest tier of people in it.
Gotcha. Okay. Hey, listen, I want to squeeze in a question. So I was talking to a guy that I go to church with, and I mentioned to him that I would be moderating, this panel discussion, and we got into talking about the use of lethal or deadly force. And he said to me, make sure you ask the police chief, why is it, and this is his opinion, he laid it out for me. He says, it seems to me that when white police officers get into an altercation or a confrontation with a white younger suspect, it seems to him that they're less likely to resort to lethal force. Whereas if, you put that same scenario and they're with a younger Black male and they're in some sort of confrontation, they're more apt to use lethal force. I don't know if there's any studies out there maybe that look at, race and, terms of police use of force, but I wanted to throw that out to you just because I've heard that sentiment expressed in the Black community. What are your thoughts on that, Chief?
I think that's where implicit bias comes into play. And, it really comes down to that individual police officer, did they perceive the person that they're confronting as a threat? And if the only differing factor is color of their skin, that's an implicit bias that that officer is practicing. So,
Okay, right. Because what he also said to me, so I didn't finish the story. He said that he feels that the reason that that white police officer might be more inclined to use lethal force against the black suspect than the white suspect, because, you know, when he's in that situation, he may view that white suspect as someone that reminds him of his son, grandson, nephew. So it's that kind of commonality is what he suggested to me. So, I mean, again, I don't know if there's any empirical data to either, you know, bolster that or to refute that, but does that make sense to you? Is there any credence to that?
it seems like that's human nature. And it seems like that could be the same goes for the black police officer who sees a young black man on the street. They could see them as their son, and the younger white person as not. So I think that that's human nature, what he's explaining, but I wouldn't necessarily say that it's true. I think that through training at the police academy, and we go through it here in yearly trainings, especially when it comes to shoot, don't shoot scenarios, that we train ourselves to think beyond things like that. But, you know, can we dive into people's heads? We really can't, but it could be possible.
Okay. All right.
Paul, let me just say, statistically, locally, I've looked at this situation in my tenure. We've had 9 people killed in police encounters. All of the people killed had either a gun or a knife. Racially, there were two African Americans, 2 Hispanics, and 5 white people. So I don't see any evidence of racial disproportionality, or, you know, in those statistics. Nor do I see in any of the individual cases, which I know pretty well about all of them, any sort of, you know, we've never had a George Floyd type situation where excessive force resulted in a death. They've all been shootings responding to people with weapons.
Gotcha. I think he was talking more so on a national level than, you know, Schenectady focus or center,
Sure.
but your point is certainly well taken. Hey, Gary, I want to ask you, when you hear about the Black Lives Matter movement, what comes to mind?
And it's the label that's been put on the community movement, where people of color feel that they're not being treated equally or given the same level of opportunity. And so Black Lives Matter, and they want the recognition, they want the equality, and they want the recognition within our community that they rightfully deserve.
Gotcha. Now, I know that you had the Black Lives Matter kind of stenciled in along the front there of City Hall, but people in the community have said, hey, that's good. You know, thank you so much, but it needs to go deeper than that. We need to do a lot more than that. I mean, can you certainly understand that sentiment from them? And maybe you can just outline for me some of, you know, what you have in mind in terms of kind of, you know, maybe moving that movement forward and taking it past just, you know, just putting something on a street?
Well, if you look at our economic development, where there's more activity when I came in as mayor, Hamilton Hill was perceived as the worst neighborhood. There is more economic development that has happened there in probably the last 75 years. The package that we are putting together, Chief Clifford and myself, for community engagement under the governor's directive, today it's a little bit unmanageable, but we're bringing everybody in. We want to have the input. We want to be able to articulate what we're doing right. We want to be able to identify those weak spots, and we want to be able to go forward where we continue to build on that record that we have here, that make people feel comfortable and confident that the police and the community as a whole works for everybody, not just for somebody or discriminates against anybody.
Gotcha. Hey, Chief Clifford, you're sort of in the same boat. I know that you took the knee during the protest, and you marched with some of the folks that were outside protesting outside the police department. But then I'm sure you probably heard, yeah, Chief, we appreciate it. You were lauded for what you did. But some folks in the Black community said, okay, where do we go from here? What else does he need to do in order to kind of, make sure that, ensure that there's more progress for people of color?
Yeah, I continue to say out there, and I'm not getting any responses. Tell me what it looks like. What would you like to see? I'm open to ears.
And nobody's responding to you, Chief?
Nobody has responded to me. All we've gotten is 13 demands, which will be discussed at our conversations.
Right.
Some of those demands have already been addressed, but nobody has taken up an opportunity to talk to me or tell me what this looks like. What would you like to see? Again, from my perspective, this transformation started 13 years ago. We've been doing a lot. 4 years ago, we started doing more community engagement. Last year, we did more community engagement activities in our community than we've ever done. So, what more can we do?
Gotcha. All right.
I'm kind of tapped out with ideas. I need
Right.
some help coming up
Gotcha.
with what we'd like to see.
Well, you just put the call out, and my understanding is that this is being recorded. Then it'll be shown to some of the activists in and around this community, in and around the Schenectady community. So I'm sure that you'll be inundated with, what you can do next. So there you go. All right. Hey, DA Carney, let me just, as we wrap up here, let me just get you, and I'm sure you'll appreciate this, just by way of, a summation, talk with me. When we look at the confluence of everything that's going on in terms of these protests and these calls for, racial equity and justice, are you optimistic that at some point, perhaps that we will move towards, I guess, what's being referred to as a post-racial society? Are you optimistic that, everything that's being done, all these protests, all these things like what you and I and, the mayor and the police chief, that they're going to bear some fruit, that people are going to start to look at things differently, and perhaps, at some point we won't be having these conversations. Are you optimistic at all?
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I think there's a lot about the protests that are positive. It's also an inflection point in society. I think we have a president who has, done more than have dog whistles to, white supremacy, which is unfortunate. But I think this kind of is part of what's happening contextually at this time. You got the president of the United States saying, there are fine people on both sides, referring to white supremacists marching in Charlottesville. That has awakened people, as well as the George Floyd thing. And I think so. I think we are going to move in a more positive direction. I do think there is something that needs to be said about Black Lives Matter. It is a movement that must also recognize that all Black lives matter. I've been working all year, it seems, during the pandemic on homicide cases involving, I think we've had 5 shootings. Albany's had 15 or 16. 4 of our 5 victims were Black. 1 was white. But I can assure you none of them were killed by racists. So the issue, and I feel like my whole career I've spent worrying about Black lives and dealing with Black lives and the victims of violence against Black people. And the most important thing I can do is to show that I care deeply about each of those losses. But I think that the movement has to understand that the problem of gun violence is also something that is, of daily more concern than the number of times people are killed in encounters with police.
Right. So you, Bob, you get the sense that the Black Lives Movement does not consider that? I find that hard to believe because, when you have the level of gun violence that we see in Troy, in Albany, I mean, how can that not be part of their platform? I kind of find that hard to
I don't
believe.
know. I haven't heard locally that it's part of anybody's platform. I have heard national speakers acknowledge this as an issue, but I think it has to be part of the conversation.
Gotcha. Okay. And again, I think you will have some folks who will be viewing and listening to this that they might take issue with you on that, but who knows? Maybe at some point we'll get, they'll get to respond to what you guys are saying. Go ahead.
Well, Black Lives Matter is just viewed as an anti-police thing. It's just, it's going to be limited. And it's
Right, okay. Yeah, I agree with you 110%. It's got to be broader than that. Gary, are you optimistic that at some point, maybe not in my lifetime, your lifetime, that perhaps we'll reach a point that we are a post-racial society?
Well, Paul, I wish both of us a very long lifespan, and I hope that it happens, that we don't meet untimely demise in the short term, but that we, in fact, do see a society that we're all proud of, that we're able to overcome those short inequities, that it's just a flaw in the human character, that unfortunately it exists, and by better talking about it or identifying it, we can overcome it and all be proud of those accomplishments.
Gotcha. Chief Clifford, I think I'm going to give you the last word and ask you the same question. I mean, given everything that's going on in today, I mean, this defining movement, this reckoning that the country's going through, are you optimistic? And when you view it as somebody in law enforcement, are you kind of bolstered or kind of buoyed by what you see in terms of like, hey, things can get better in this country that we live in?
I'm optimistic. In our lifetime, that's going to be pretty aggressive. I'm optimistic that we can get to
You're
that.
a young guy.
I think that what helps is conversation. I think that in my experience, anytime there's been an issue or a problem, when it's talked about, it always gets better. And I've seen it happen on so many different levels, whether it's something that would be considered social injustice, or just something as simple as gun violence. We saw a reduction in gun violence once the GIVE initiative was brought forward by the state, where we just started talking about gun violence more. It comes to the forefront of everybody's minds and everything that they do, and you become cognizant of it, aware of it, and you start improving yourself because of it. Whether you're a police officer on the street dealing with crime, or whether you're just a normal person walking through your day, and now you're more aware of being of implicit bias or racial injustice, social injustice for that matter. You're more cognizant of it, and you're going to be a better person as a result of it. So I think conversation here is the key. What makes me cringe is that what's happened this summer is that the protests have been happening, but the people that are protesting are saying they don't want dialogue, they just want change. And I'm imploring them to sit down and have dialogue. I know they're going to say no. I'm hoping that they change their mind and they say yes. We can all sit down and talk about this. Everybody's attention has been grabbed. By doing this forum, we're talking about it. Let's move forward with it instead of doing protests and screaming and some people just closing their ears. Let's just sit down and talk and figure out how we can move forward on this, because we can do it.
I agree with you. And just in closing, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate the time. And if I could just kind of piggyback on what you said, I think that's what's critically important, is to engage in a meaningful dialogue, because that's what's going to bring about any substantive change. So I think talking needs to continue. And we got to understand too, that there will be some uncomfortable topics when we're talking about, racism and social injustice. There's going to be some topics that come up that we may not feel that comfortable talking about. But that's what's going to move us forward. So again, thank you, District Attorney Bob Carney, Gary McCarthy, the Mayor of Schenectady, Schenectady Police Chief Eric Clifford. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Paul, go ahead.
I just wanted to say this is a good start. This is how we begin to listen to each other. I mean, with respect, with civility, with honesty. I mean, there were disagreements here. There's certainly racial divides. I mean, we're going to be doing a program with Robin DiAngelo, the author of White Fragility. I hate to admit, but I'm part of the white privilege and white supremacy. I think we have to come to terms with this. It's 400 years in creating this issue, but this is how it starts. This kind of respectful dialogue, listening to each other. And I learned a lot, and I really appreciate, in particularly, my friend, my longtime colleague, Times Union reporter, Paul Nelson, did a great job moderating. We hope we can take this kind of spirit and continue throughout this symposium called The Time for Reckoning on behalf of the New York State Writers Institute at the University of Albany, the Center for Law and Justice in Albany, and our other partners. Thank you all to our Schenectady public officials for participating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul. All right.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Too.